I've never been in this pub, and I don't think I ever will. So, forgive me for not getting much of Flatter's house. I don't think the A153 ran through when Bernie lived there. But anyway, this is just down the road, down the country lane from it. He was a country bumpkin. Lots of the infamous story about him and his granddad and his brother going to the stream just around the back of where he lived, down to the stone bridge to play poo sticks. Is poo sticks a ridiculously English thing, or does everybody do it? Anyway, so in 1971 Bernie Taupin did a spoken word album. He basically had Elton John's musicians. This was as Elton John was getting big. He used his musicians to put music, and he read out his poetry. He has a couple of albums like that, but his first one, the first half, is called Child, and on that side, in the poems, he references his childhood and his roots, which is this area, and one of them is called Flatters, which is the farmhouse that was just down there. It's called Flatters A Beginning. It's a house where he was born, and like I mentioned before, he mentions about playing on the stream and playing on the bridge, and allow me to read you some poetry. That sun is very bright. So I thought I'd read the poem that he wrote about this place and try not to get run over in the process, which would be an added bonus. Amid the rocks that shone and sparkled, trust of sides is uncomparable, dived and danced in naked wonder, all along the crystal sparkling waters, while we three watched on warm days when time was sparing. For little did we realise how much we loved the life we shared, so short a time to build a dream, but large enough to love that stream. Our first love was that shady glade, for she always was a wondrous place. But if only time could then secure my satisfied seclusion point, and every day I would walk across the old stone bridge down the wooden path. So unfortunately I can't get much closer to the farmhouse. We had that picture from the front of the house, but it's on the A154. I can't stop outside and take a better picture. This is where Bernie was born. He was born in there. This was all his farmland with his father. He lived here until the age of 8. They had no electricity in the house, and he would work on the fields even at that early age. He said infamously about living here, or living in Lincolnshire in general, and I quote, "Lincolnshire is the Idaho of England. You are either going to drive a tractor for the rest of your life or head for the city to work in a factory. Being from Lincolnshire, I did both." So when Bernie was 8 years old, he moved to this little village. Very quiet, very quaint again. Country bumpkin. This is Roston Manor. Now, I can't really get into the houses because they're all blocked away, but it's just over the stone wall. So my audio didn't work for this part of the video, but what I thought I would do is I thought I would read the poem Roston Manor, which is from the Bernie Taupin 1971 album that I referenced a couple of times. This is it for the poetry after this, I promise. Your windows watched with ancient style, a rustic monarch building pride, had a deep effect on the country child. For the spin he rocked with poison band, made Robin Hood a worthwhile game, but crying cracked some sturdy plans, timeless bliss was an endless game. Near Gothic was the place we ruled, and the gargoyles charmed our lawn, but a sponge cake ept on a windowsill marked when the new home was born. Now, it was at this residence where Bernie lived with his family from the age of 8 until his marriage in 1971. A lot of the early Elton John songs, the lyrics would have been written in this house. Just in that front room there. So your song would have been written in there. He would have done a lot of his spoken word album, which he would release in 1971. Also, one of the most infamous stories is the beginnings of Rocket Man. He had the words for Rocket Man going over and over in his head, and he had to repeat them. He was driving back to this residence, and he was worried he would forget the words, so he kept saying them. And when he got into this house, he just wrote them down. That's how Rocket Man began. This all would have been his farmland for the when I was at the residence, just there in the front window, as we looked at the house on the right, that would have been his room. That was said to be his room. So it would have been in there. Lots of the early Elton John lyrics would have been written. He, like I say, he lived in this area for 15 years? So basically when they met up, them being him and Elton John, this all would have been the residence. This was all farmland. And the parents' property. There was a song on one of Elton John's most recent albums called Diving Board, and there was a lyric in there about reflecting on going home and being home. And his brother wrote to him and said, I won't name this place, but he was saying, you weren't thinking of this place when you wrote it. And Bernie's reply was, no, Tony, I wasn't thinking of this place. It was a state of mind. This place is the last place I'd ever want to go back to. It's a pleasant little spot. And so it was a lot different then than it is now. Now, this is just down the road from where he was. So where the car is down there, and Pigeon Skyline. One of his most infamous early songs, one of his best ones, was said to have been written about playing in this church. The bells are said to be written about the bells in this tower. Said he would run down here at night or in the day and just climb up into the bell tower. And that was like his little sanctuary. He writes a bit about living and growing up in Lincolnshire and about how isolated it is. There's a church. and it is a really isolated county. It's the county I'm from. But even for Lincolnshire, this is a very remote place. Pigeon Skyline also mentions the gloomy room, and the room I pointed out at the start, that it was probably the room he was referring to. And it's a good lyric about wanting to get out and wanting to fly and be away, and during lockdown I can very much relate to that lyric. That's all from this little town. One last thing is Pigeon Skyline, the song I was just mentioned, that was written about this humble place. It's like the Elton John song in the Philippines and Brazil. I have no idea why, it's very good. But yeah, apparently it's his song in the Philippines and Brazil. But that's it from this little village. So it was this church in March of 1971 when Elton John came to sleepy Market Rasen. This is where Bernie Taupin married the seamstress for the band. Now, Bernie Taupin is probably more infamously known for Lincolnshire-wise Market Rasen because of Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. And we'll go to that pub in a second. But this is where he married Maxine. They met in LA when Elton John first started touring in Los Angeles. They met at the Troubadour over needing to borrow a hairdryer. They came back to Market Rasen to marry. Like I said, March 1971. There's lots of pictures here, and just at these front grounds of Elton John, Bernie, Maxine. Very quiet town in the middle of nowhere in Lincolnshire. Mark Bolan attended, I do believe. But they went back to LA after the wedding. They honeymooned in Hawaii and spent some time with Maxine's family, but they then came back to Lincolnshire. They stayed, I'll go to the house where they stayed as well. Bernie is quoted saying he wanted to spend as much time in Lincolnshire as possible. I don't think he feels the same way anymore. Anyway, but this is the Catholic church where Bernie got married, and this is why Elton John came to Market Rasen. So this is the Aston Arms. There we go, in all its glory. This is famous, well, infamous. This is where Bernie Taupin wrote Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting about. Apparently the Caister boys, they were from just up the road there, and the boys from Market Rasen, which is where we are, would come to this pub on a Saturday night and have a big fight. It said this is where he used to go. He would play snooker, he'd go drinking, and yeah, he'd get a little bit of action in, as the lyric goes. Look, it's unremarkable Aston Arms, Market Rasen. Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. I've never been in this pub, and I don't think I ever will. Now, down this little lane in a very remote part of Lincolnshire, it is really beautiful but very quiet. In that house is where Bernie Taupin wrote all of the lyrics for Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It's a Candle in the Wind, the greatest selling British single of all time, is written there. Benny and the Jets, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting, where we've just been to, that was written there. It is beautiful around here, very quiet. Now, the lyrics only took about 2 weeks to write. Both Bernie Taupin and Elton John, who never worked together, both did work very quickly. Both would only give themselves a certain amount of time to write a certain piece of music or piece of lyric. Bernie would give himself an hour. If the lyric didn't come, he would just bin it off. And Elton John was even less impatient, he would give himself half an hour. So all the lyrics to Goodbye Yellow Brick Road were written in that little cottage in 2.5 weeks. The cottage was called, was it Piglet in the Wild? I will correct myself if I'm wrong. He had a picture of Winnie the Pooh and Piglet on the front of the door, and he lived there from 71 into the mid-70s. From there he went to LA, or California, and he's been there ever since. Like I said, I don't know how the LA wannabe actress would have coped here. The marriage didn't last. They were to split up in the mid-70s, so they're only there for a few years. But it's very famous, well, very infamous, because Lincolnshire was the place where the most successful British single was ever written, and it was written in that little cottage. I'm sorry I couldn't stay on the property too much longer. It was private residence again, and I don't want to annoy people. Again, aspiring Los Angeles actress to here. I can't imagine how it went down. So I've got a bit of a walk back to the car, so I'll give you some stats as I walk. Candle in the Wind. The 1997 version opposed to the 1973 lyrics that were written there it's the best selling British single of all time, but not so much the Bing Crosby's White Christmas is said to be the best selling single of all time. It's the only single in America that went diamond, which is 10 million copies. It was in the Canadian top 20 for 3 years. 3 years in the top 20. Oh, people. Thought I'd just let all that farm traffic go by. There's a church over there, I don't know if I can get it in the thing. I'll put a little picture. It's just over there if you can't see it. I'll put a little picture. This is Tilby, and there's an early Elton John song called Tilby Abbey, I'm Happy in Tilby Abbey, something like that. Now that's dated 1968, that song. It's a very early Taupin John collaboration, one of their first songs. And he didn't live here until 71. So that's a church. I know it's not an abbey, but it's very imposing, and I don't know if maybe the dates of when he moved here are a little bit wrong, but I don't think they will be, because 68 they were just scratching around really. Your Song, Rocket Man, Daniel made Elton John huge. But it was really the 1973 album Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, which he was huge, don't get me wrong, but he was a superstar after that album. The album was on #1 for so long in America and the UK. It's still kind of referred to as his classic album. I'll send you a link to that Tilby Abbey song. I find it just a little bit strange that he ended up living in Tilby, and then in 1968 wrote a song about it. Maybe it was his desire to live in Tilby. Poor Maxine, eh? I'm only joking. It's a beautiful little village. It's just so remote. Have I said that? It's after mid-70s. I think 77 is when you can date Bernie moving to California, and he would never come back. He's not been back to Lincolnshire not been back to England, let alone Lincolnshire, for 20 years. But Elton John on his farewell tour did play the Lincoln Showground. So I don't know if because it was his farewell he had to play somewhere in Lincolnshire. I'm sure Bernie didn't care, but it's nice for someone to come to Lincoln for a change. I'll swing you around. This is probably a walk that they took, I would imagine. Down the beck, everyone seems to be enjoying that part. There's walkers over there, so I imagine it's probably a walk that you would have taken around here. It's literally 5 minutes from his house, and it's very nice and quiet. And if you move in here, I'm assuming you want quiet, but I'll swing you around one last time. See, see the top of the abbey, just that. We're in darkness. I thought I'd just say this is the end of the walk. It is beautiful around here. It's a really quaint little English village. See all the bridges and the stream that leads to the back, just where we lived. It is beautiful. And I just wanted to show you some of the beauty of the area. Nothing more from me.
So thank you if you stayed with the video and watched to the end. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'm going to try and do some more music videos as I move forward in lockdown. My first time being on the camera, so forgive me if the quality wasn't great. I'm not the most confident at speaking into the camera, and also the lighting and everything. I know I've tried to restore it the best I could, but anyway, thank you so much for staying with it. You take care, have a great day.